Welcome to CYC in Practice, our series on mental health. This is episode 1, and our topic will be anxiety. I am your host, Dasha. We'll discuss what it looks like, the symptoms in childhood and adolescence, its impact on lives, and ways we can support those with it. We'll be diving into generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, and panic attacks. If you or a loved one is experiencing a mental health crisis and need to talk to someone, use the CMHA helpline at 613-741-6433. Mental health is as important as physical health. Don't suffer alone. Reach out and get the help you need. Without further ado, let's get into it. I chose the topic because I have anxiety and have had it for as long as I remember, getting diagnosed at 17. I have been on medication for it, only getting off of it in the past year due to some physical health concerns. So I've been going through life in the past year, bare bones, feeling very anxious for a lot of things. But I think considering my experiences and the help that I have, I've been able to get through it. Coincidentally, I was diagnosed with our first type of anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder. According to the National Library of Medicine, or NLM for short, generalized anxiety disorder is a disorder that produces fear, worry, and constant feeling of being overwhelmed. It is characterized by excessive, persistent, and unrealistic worry about everyday things. Children and adolescents may show symptoms of restlessness or feeling on edge, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, irritability, muscle tension, and disturbed sleep. For youth to be diagnosed with it, they must present anxiety and worry with one or more of the previously listed symptoms. These can significantly impact a child's life, especially in academia and social. And if they have a job, it can affect them there too. Growing up with anxiety, it always felt like something was wrong. And it really messed with my ability to flourish and do school. I think I spent most of my time growing up always playing video games, watching YouTube, and watching shows or reading because it was an escape from my thoughts. Whenever I wasn't doing a distraction, I felt nervous about where my life was going. And that can be something extremely difficult to go through as a youth. Because even when you try to talk to other people about it, it's almost like once you start to verbalize your anxieties, it just doesn't seem as terrible as it seems. But it still feels awful. And that's why evidence-based interventions like CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, is the gold standard for young people with generalized anxiety disorder. And as we will discuss later, a great type of therapy for many types of mental health struggles. CBT is a psychotherapy that challenges the way you think. And in the context of anxiety, specifically generalized anxiety, CBT helps target irrational thoughts and challenges them. On top of this, medicine also helps alleviate the symptoms of anxiety. I do think that psychoeducation is also extremely important. because it gives the mystery of your anxiety less impact. I know personally that whenever I was a kid and I was outside and I felt this rush of anxiety, all I could think of was my mom is hurt, or just now one of the teachers just graded my paper and they failed me, or my dog died, or my dad just lost his job, or I'm about to die. Like, very irrational thoughts, of course. But to me, in those moments, it felt real. It felt like, okay, so I feel this anxiety because of something that's happening in this moment. So having that psychoeducation is so important, because being able to stop and realize that what you're feeling is not necessarily real. Those thoughts that you're feeling are irrational. And I think as a CYC, your role should be to provide that psychoeducation and to acknowledge and listen to a youth who is experiencing anxiety, so that you can decipher if it's a quote-unquote real or fake type of anxiety. Of course, at the end of the day, what a youth experiences is always going to be real, even if what their thoughts are about aren't. I think as a CYC, your role should be to provide a safe space and give them the tools to respond to those stressors. On an academic level, when it comes to IEPs, helping students plan for when they miss school can help alleviate some stress of falling behind or failing classes because you just can't come to school. Additionally, giving them extra time during examinations or going into a different room to take those examinations can really help them academically. On top of this, allowing them to leave the classroom to see a counselor when they need to can also benefit them. I know that for myself, being able to leave the class when I was having a lot of anxiety or feeling some type of way really helped me feel seen and made me, I felt like people actually cared about what I was going through. Whenever I felt this overwhelming wave of anxiety, I would get up, I would go to the teacher and say, hey, I'm going to the counselor. And I had quite a good relationship with the counselor, that all I had to do was say, I'm going to the counselor. If you need to talk to her about what I'm going through, you can talk to her. And they, for the most part, were like, okay, well, whatever, as long as she tells me as long as she, acknowledges that that's where you went, then go for it. And having that freedom really helped with my anxiety, because not only did it give me some control over how I felt, it also, I always had someone to talk to whenever I felt my overwhelming anxiety. The second type of anxiety we'll be discussing is social anxiety. I thought it was normal. I thought it was normal to be so anxious that you would tremble, that the mere thought of having to interact in a social setting, I thought all of this was normal. But as I aged and started to talk to people about it, I learned that actually, it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to have some anxiety. It's really normal to have anxiety when it comes to talking to people or interacting with people. However, it isn't at the level that I experienced it at. I used to go to cadets, and every single time I had to go, I would dread going. I don't really know exactly why it was cadets that kind of started my social anxiety, but anytime I wanted to go to, or I had to go to cadets, I would think about ways I could get out of it. And I'm not saying like, call in sick, or say that my parents aren't letting me, or whatever it is. I was thinking of extremes, ways on how I could get out of it. Trigger warning. I would Google ways that I could sprain my ankle or sprain my wrists or do something that would hurt myself in a way that would make me not be able to go. And I didn't realize that was not normal until way later. So anyways, according to the DSM-5, as cited in week 4 lecture, social anxiety, panic, and OCD, social anxiety is the persistent, intense fear or anxiety about specific social situations because you believe you may be judged, embarrassed, or humiliated. Symptoms include feeling sweaty, blushing, rapid heartbeat, trembling, nausea, and shortness of breath. I know whenever I went to my cadets, I was experiencing these symptoms, especially one particular day where I was really I had finally, it had hit me in a way of maybe what I'm feeling isn't normal. I was feeling that shortness of breath, and I needed air and I needed water, and so I left the gymnasium to go get some water, and one of the captains stopped me and said, "Hey, are you okay?" And I'm like, yeah. She's like, "Okay, well, your eyes are bloodshot, and your hands are purple." And I was like, and I looked down and I saw that my hands were a whole different color. And I didn't realize that at that moment I was going through a really severe wave of anxiety. Social anxiety, like generalized anxiety, can impact academic and your social life. However, social anxiety disorder can have a greater impact on the social life of a youth. Because of the anxiety that you experience in social situations, it can make them avoid certain settings where they could make friends or make connections. As mentioned previously, methods commonly used to help a young person is cognitive behavior therapy. Within CBT, the young person is taught coping strategies that challenge negative thoughts and teach them how to overcome them. Furthermore, psychoeducation has been really, really good for young people experiencing social anxiety. Because as I mentioned previously, it gives you the necessary knowledge on why you're feeling this way. It's one thing to go through something and not know what's going on. And being able to actually recognize that what I'm feeling, what I'm going through, is social anxiety. What I'm feeling is completely internalized. No one around me hates me. No one is thinking all these negative thoughts that I am personally thinking about myself, and kind of projecting and thinking that everyone else is thinking about me. Another really great tool in terms of interventions would be building the toolbox, which incorporates observing the social anxiety, learning to relax, realistic thinking, and facing fears. For a CYC, their role is to provide that toolbox and a non-judgmental environment where the youth feels accepted. We should help them with those small social goals and challenge them to grow as a person. And we need to role model for them in the sense of social interactions. That being said, some IEP recommendations for youth with social anxiety is allowing them to leave class early to avoid the hustling and bustling of the in-between class or lunch. Another recommendation would be to provide a designated area for them that is quiet when the class becomes overwhelming. And allowing them to sit wherever can also be beneficial. In the same sense of giving them more time for examinations would also be a plus for them. Finally, we move on to our last anxiety disorder to discuss today, and that is panic attacks. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, panic attacks are characterized by a sudden wave of fear or discomfort or a sense of losing control even when there is no clear danger. Symptoms include a sudden overwhelming anxiety and fear of death or impending doom, and avoidance of places that may trigger a panic attack. There are two types of panic attacks, unexpected and expected. Unexpected is a spontaneous, out-of-the-blue panic attack, while a expected panic attack is one that you know will bring a panic attack, which could be fear of driving, fear of a certain spot because of a previous negative interaction, or common would be like being afraid of dogs and having a reaction to that. Physical symptoms include a racing heart, sweating, chills, difficulty breathing, weakness, numb hands, chest pain, and nausea. Most panic attacks last a few minutes and diminish within the next few hours. While experiencing an attack may be extremely distressing, they are not life-threatening. And that is something that, as I will mention in a few minutes, a CYC should always remind a young person going through a panic attack. The impacts of experiencing panic attacks can be extremely disruptive in the lives of young people. Students may miss school in fear of triggering an attack, and that may impact their grades. It could also make them avoid certain places and essentially make them withdraw from life entirely if it were to progress to a point where they don't even want to leave the house in fear of triggering a panic attack. As I continuously mentioned throughout this podcast and will be mentioned in the other episodes, CBT is the number one type of intervention for young people experiencing panic attacks. As mentioned, it is a way to control negative thoughts and challenge ideas and beliefs that are predominantly negative. On top of this, a very important intervention would be psychoeducation. Knowing that you are not dying can help alleviate the extreme distress that comes from having a panic attack. Knowing that it lasts only about a few minutes and that the effects diminish within the next few hours. Knowing that what you're feeling is a result of a certain trigger, knowing is a huge part of understanding and mitigating the effects. On top of this, youth can also be prescribed medication like antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. A CYC's role in helping a young person with panic attacks would be to recognize the signs, the early signs of a panic attacks, and to learn what could potentially trigger a young person. And this goes hand in hand with making an IEP for young people experiencing panic attacks. Like the two other types of anxieties that we have discussed, allowing youth to leave an environment that is potentially triggering can really help them feel seen, listened, and can help them academically as well. Allowing them more time on examinations can help mitigate the effects. Allowing them to leave the classroom when it becomes overwhelming to talk to a counselor would be beneficial. And assigning a room where they know they can take shelter in when things are getting hectic or when they feel a panic attack coming is another IEP recommendation that would be beneficial for a young person. That concludes our discussion on today's topic of anxiety. We have discussed generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, and panic attacks. As I know firsthand, anxiety can be extremely difficult to manage, and a weight that seems to always be there. As CYCs, our job isn't to fix their mental health struggles. It's to help navigate them. It's to give practical tools and strategies and coping mechanisms that are healthy. It's to provide support and to be patient and present. So I leave you with the reminder that as a CYC, always remember to meet your youth where they are at. This was the first episode of CYC in Practice, a mental health series. In the next episodes, our hosts will talk about PTSD, obsessive-compulsive disorder, depression, bipolar disorder 1 and 2, early onset schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, and substance use disorder. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope all of you an amazing day.